I actually have a new computer. I can record directly on the computer. The old machine is so old. It's 7 years old, something like that. I got it from my son. But this one is new.
Yay.
Dan the man. So this is Martin Richards recording for the podcast, The Power of Coaching in Education. And today we're meeting Dan.
Hello.
So, Dan, would you like to say a little bit about your background as an educator to get us started?
Absolutely, yes. Interestingly, I didn't really know that I wanted to be a teacher or an educator. I was in sixth form, still didn't really know what I wanted to do, and one of my teachers said to me, "You would make a good teacher." So I said, "Okay, I'll do that," and that's literally how it happened. So I went off to university with the plan of becoming a secondary art teacher. That was the plan. I loved art; it was one of my favorite subjects, so it just made sense. However, when I went to university, my first placement was at a primary school. And I never stepped into a secondary school again after that. I absolutely fell in love with primary teaching. Let me correct that. I never stepped into a secondary school as a teacher ever again, because I just fell in love with primary teaching. It was ace. I loved how we could support children in so many different ways within primary. You didn't just have one focus. You seem to get that huge connection with the class that you're working with. I'm sure secondary teachers would say they get that as well, but I just felt that I got that a little bit more as a primary teacher. So I became a qualified primary teacher specializing in Key Stage 2. And I qualified in 2008. Was it 2008? I may have got that wrong. I may not have done the maths properly. No, I haven't. Yes, no, because I have got it wrong. It's 2012. I qualified in 2012, and that's when I got my first teaching job. And I spent 5.5 years as a full-time primary school teacher. I worked in 3 different primary schools during that time. I absolutely loved it. I still think that teaching is one of the best jobs in the world, particularly between the hours of 9 and 3. But I had an opportunity to leave full-time teaching and step into the world of coaching, which I did in 2018.
Okay, we'll go back to a check on those dates and we'll do a little voiceover around that because that was a fun thing to say. Okay. So just to summarize what you said, you weren't thinking of becoming a teacher. It was something one of your teachers said, you'd be a good teacher. He was right that you'd be a good teacher. That was amazing to be able to pick that out. And it was interesting how you trained to be a secondary teacher, but kind of ended up by accident in primary, where you have the same students all day. And as a secondary teacher myself, my moments, my few hours in primary, there is a much more authentic, perhaps raw contact with these young people that you meet in primary compared to secondary, where you meet them for an hour or an hour and a half, and then they're gone, and then there's another group, and then they're gone, there's another group. You don't have that sustained connection. So one of my regrets is that I went into secondary, which is strange. I wish I'd gone into primary. My great love is working with teenagers. It's the unfinished mind that I find fascinating. Anyway, you ended off by saying you became a coach. So what made you become a coach?
I became a coach because I love the impact coaching can have. I found myself, whilst teaching, caring a little bit more about the social, emotional side, that aspect of developing young people, yes, of course, I saw that academic progress was absolutely something that mattered, and the main reason schools are there. But I just found myself being drawn to that other side, that almost well-being side of caring for the young people, and that and I found coaching is a way of doing that. I can support and develop young people as well as older people, one to one, in any way they choose. It's not just, oh, I've got to teach you this. It's actually, well, no, in coaching you get to control what you develop, and what you focus on, and what progress you want to make, and where. And I loved that kind of empowerment that coaching gave the individuals I worked with. And teaching is all about progress, but it's almost, I'm going to take the knowledge that I have and implant it into you. Whereas as coaching is almost like, well, let's just explore this together and find out where it goes. And that excites me. I'm also someone who loves just like finding stuff out about people. I'm a curious person. And in a classroom, of course I've got to find out about the students, but actually it's not the main reason I'm there. The main reason I'm there is to educate. As a coach, it's absolutely about exploration and curiosity, and listening and absorbing all of that, and just reflecting back and seeing where that goes. I just think coaching changes lives, and I say that because it changed mine. So it's not just, it's something I know rather than I think, because it has changed my life. It changed the way I see the world. It changed the way I see myself. It changed the way I view what I can achieve in life. It changed the way I feel about things, view things. It changed the way I parent. It changed the way I'm a husband. It changed the way I'm a friend. It was that powerful that I chose to become a coach, because it, I want that in my life all the time. I want to be around coaching as much as possible. So I decided to become a coach.
Cool. Thank you for that. And you gave a very good description of how teaching can be quite linear, that you're, as you mentioned, dealing out knowledge and following a syllabus. And sometimes when the student has certain needs, it pulls you away from the syllabus, from giving out more knowledge, because they have another need. And coaching doesn't have that limitation. It's more multidimensional. You can go wherever the coaching takes you. Greater freedom. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
thank you for that. So we ask all of our interviewees a particular question about their first time. And you've already alluded to the power of coaching. Can you share with us the time when you realized that coaching is so powerful?
Absolutely. It's a story I tell quite a lot, so it will come quite naturally, hopefully. So I was lucky enough to work in a very kind of forward-thinking school. This was the first school that I was working in, and our head teacher and the deputy head teacher sat the teachers down one day and said, "We're getting a coach into school. You're going to have monthly coaching sessions with this professional coach." And I've got to be honest, I didn't know really what coaching was. I thought it was something like counseling, but I wasn't completely sure. I also felt like I didn't need coaching. This is the first time I'd heard of it, and I'd already assumed that this was something I didn't need. I was quite a happy person. I was quite a confident person. I didn't know why I was being given this. And I said this to my coach in that first session. I said exactly those words. I said, "This might be a waste of your time." And he said, "Look, school's paying for this. Give it 3 sessions. If you feel the same way after 3 sessions, we'll stop." Now, that magic moment in coaching for me happened about 45 minutes into the first session. So I didn't need 3 sessions at all. I was hooked after 45 minutes. And it was a feeling. It was, I almost felt more important during that session than I'd ever felt before. I felt like the most important person in my world, and I'd never felt like that before. And it was such a strange feeling, but it was a great feeling, and I wanted more of it, and I couldn't wait until my next session. And I couldn't really explain it back then because it was so new to me. Looking back on it now, I honestly believe it was the power of listening that made me feel that way. I think we're very good at pretending to listen. We're very good at listening to respond. Whereas this was the first time I had someone sat in front of me and was just listening to me because I was worthy of that time and space, and what I had to say was important and useful and valuable. And that almost just listening to someone can be enough to make them feel good, make them feel important, which raises self-esteem, which then could potentially make them feel more confident to go and make positive change in their life. So as a coach, even if you can just listen, that can sometimes be enough. And that can and that's something I always actually promise my clients, the people I work with. I don't promise them to change their life. That can happen, and certainly positive change happens because of the coaching. But I can't promise that. The only thing I do promise is that I will listen to them, probably better than anyone else has. And that's magic. And that's the moment I fell in love with coaching, literally 45 minutes into my first session. Yeah, that's the answer to that question.
Wonderful. And I've heard you mention that story before, and like myself, we get to tell our story. And I think every person who's become a coach has had that magical moment. And we do use words like magic, hooked, when there is a chemical reason why this is happening, why our brains are wired up for being listened to. We have a need for it. And so often we don't take the time. Kudos to those head teachers who said, we're bringing in a coach. On occasion, I've been that coach. And on occasions, I've coached the head teachers or consulted with the head teachers on the benefits of coaching and being coached. And it's exactly that kind of story that you've told that helps them go, yeah, we'll do this. Often there's money involved. So they want to know that they're going to get value for money. But after a few sessions, what they're getting is way more valuable than the dollars and kroner and pounds and lira or whatever it is that's exchanging hands in the background. There's something going on about being listened to. And you're right, it's a very different kind of listening. So that was one of the skills that a coach would need. We'll come on to the skills in a moment. But if you think of applying coaching in education, wherever you impinge the system, why is it that coaching is so powerful? And what are the benefits could you see? And I'm talking about coaching head teachers, teachers, and students. What are you getting out as results?
So I'm someone who coaches both senior leaders in school and teachers in school, and thirdly, actually, I do coach the students in school as well. And there are probably some crossover to benefits, but there's also probably some differences there as well. So we'll start with the teachers first of all. I see coaching as the most individualized and unique CPD there is. Now, as a teacher, I've sat through um, staff meetings and training days that have been both brilliant, but then the next one has not been so brilliant and it's not really resonated with me, and I feel like, well, this is more for key stage 1 than me. And so actually when we have these kind of training events and training days, sometimes it's perfect for certain staff members and not so good for others. So coaching is a perfect way to support the individual to develop the areas that matter to them and what's important to them. And it might not be specifically to do with teaching and learning. Coaching can step outside of that if necessary. If there's a staff member who is finding work-life balance super difficult, a conversation within in a coaching environment may allow them to see certain things that they can tweak within their life. They can control, and they can change, which would make them feel better about their job as a whole. Some staff who I work with actually use coaching to support difficulties that are going on at home, and there may be head teachers that ask me to work with staff but focus on work, and I would always say, well, I can't force that upon them. And the reason is because if you can fix the things that are going on at home, if that person chooses to use coaching that way, that then has a ripple effect. If the person's happier at home, they're probably going to be happier at work, and a happy person at work is going to help a lot more students in the classroom than someone who's not. So coaching, I've seen coaching, raise morale. I've seen coaching to develop relationships. A coaching culture within a school, if that can be created, that's a culture of openness, support, empowerment, trust, self-development, responsibility, all of these things that coaching can help people create in their lives. And then that grows into the school. I mean, this is a school I want to be working in if they've got all those things going on. Someone that can go and just ask for help and openly discuss the things they're not so great at the moment, but they want support in. That can be created with a coaching culture. Yeah, it also empowers. It empowers. I have mentioned that, I think, but it empowers people. It makes them feel like they can make positive change, that they're not reliant on their senior leaders or a more experienced staff member. Actually, look within yourself and you can probably find the answer, especially when we're talking about your classroom and the children you're working with and how to get the best out of them. The answers probably lie within you. Most of the time they do. I seriously believe that. And coaching, it empowers the person rather than them having to be told all the time. So actually, often we like to jump in with advice and say, oh, you should do it like this because I've done it like this. And that might be great advice, but actually, and that might help in the short term, but in the long term, that's not really supporting that teacher, that individual. And coaching draws that out and actually allows the individual to trust themselves to fix their own issues and solve their own problems. So that's teachers. Senior leaders, very similar in that sense, very similar in the sense that actually they want to progress and develop. Something I found coaching senior leaders is that actually they often do have some voices in their head, some thoughts in their head. So, should I be here? Am I the right person for this? What do I do? And there's no one to turn to because they're at the top of that pyramid. And a coach is a perfect person just to kind of voice these concerns and get things off their chest and really figure out what they feel is the right thing for them to do in that moment. It almost stops some senior leaders from feeling so isolated at times, because it can be a lonely job up the top, and it can be a very pressurized job at the top when you've got everyone below you looking to you for answers, looking to you for support, and to have someone to go and talk to about that and just open up about that and be listened to, that can sometimes be enough to make them feel better about who they are and the position they're in, as well as confirming the decisions they make, the choices they make in those leadership roles. Now the students who I coach, I do coach mostly teens. So it is kind of secondary school, colleges. I do coach a lot in colleges as well. On occasion, I have coached younger children as well in primary schools, and there is still a couple of primary age children I coach now. So it can work wherever. I do have to maybe step into more of a mentor role now and again for those more younger children, fill those knowledge gaps. But the biggest differences I've seen in the children that I work with, one is responsibility. So coaching allows young people to see the consequences of their actions, both good and bad, and take responsibility for their choices. So understand that actually this is happening because of something that they've done, good or bad, and make those links and start seeing that and consider that before they then make choices, and accept responsibility for the mistakes they've made and for their successes as well. It empowers young people as well. Often, as a young person, they can feel at times quite powerless. They don't have a huge amount of choice in their life. That's controlled a lot by parents, teachers, older people. And to put them into a coaching environment allows them to start making their own choices and thinking for themselves and considering what their options are. And this is sometimes quite new for some people, and it's great practice for them, because when you're an adult, there's no one there telling us what to do. We have to make these choices ourselves and consider what our options are and weigh them up and choose our path. And I think coaching allows young people to start practicing that. I also think coaching improves young people's emotional intelligence, which is a big thing. It's often, anger is a big thing that comes up with the young people I coach. This student has got anger issues, I'm told, or whatever it may be, or they need to control their anger. And actually, sometimes what they're feeling isn't anger. Sometimes what they're feeling is sadness or frustration or confusion, or they might be lost, or they're not sure which way to turn. And it comes out as it looks like anger, externally. And because they've been told this is anger, then that's what they believe. But actually, to understand the complexity of emotions and the reasons why people feel how they feel, and being able to see, when we don't delve too much into therapy and counseling as a coach, but to be able to have someone to listen to them about their story, about who they are, that alone can allow them to start processing that and understand that a little bit more. And also understand that feeling emotions, emotional intelligence, feeling emotions is okay. We're humans, we're going to feel a range of emotion, but to then learn to potentially not allow their emotions to control their actions. So feeling that feeling is fine, but actually your actions have consequences. And it's learning that as well. And that comes up a lot with when I coach young people. And there are lots of other areas I coach young people in. It might be behavior, friendships, confidence. Anxiety is a big thing these days, particularly with exams or transition. So to have a safe space to talk about those kind of things and talk about the things they can control and what they can put in place to feel better about that, or to change, is massively positive and hugely beneficial. And I am a true believer that coaching should be within every school, college, university, in the country, in the world, and available for students and staff.
Couldn't have said it better. And thank you for your examples of all three types of client that you have, both the youngsters, the teachers, and the school admin or school leaders, where you describe their different issues that coaching can address. It seems to be the listening is the thing that they have in common. There's something about listening and not judging them, giving them space, that kind of thing, which makes coaching work. So my last question to you is about the skills that an educator needs to have to be able to use, let's call it a coaching approach. They wouldn't be a certified coach like you are because you've done the training. What skills would they work on to be able to use a coaching approach in their work?
Now, I've mentioned it and you've mentioned it, but listening for me is the key one. It's I honestly believe listening is our greatest superpower.
You're going to have to break that down for me. Exactly what is it you're doing when you're listening? Because I'm listening to you, but it's not the same as coaching listening.
Absolutely not. So it's listening, listening with curiosity, listening with no judgment whatsoever. It's not listening to respond. It's, you don't necessarily need to respond at all. You definitely don't need to respond to listen. All you need to do is use your ears. You don't need to use your mouth to listen. So it's not about adding anything to the conversation, really. It's not about adding your experiences. It's definitely not about giving advice. Now, advice can be brilliant at times, and some, if it's asked for, if people want your advice, then feel free to give it. But actually, not just giving a listening ear and asking certain questions is much more important, in my opinion, than giving advice. Because the advice you give might be great for you, but for the person you're giving it to, might be meaningless. It might mean, they might completely forget it after a while. And we give advice. I honestly believe we give advice because we feel we're helping. We feel we're doing the right thing. I see someone who needs help, who's someone who's got a problem. I think I can help. Here's what I would do. And we walk away feeling pretty good about ourselves because we feel like we've solved their problem. But actually, we haven't necessarily solved their problem. They might not have actually used what we've told them to use because they didn't feel it would work for them. We've also disempowered them because it's almost like we've gone, you're not good enough to solve this, so I'll solve it for you. So I want to approach every conversation with a I'm okay, you're okay outlook. So neither one is above the other. And if you can listen in that way, and you can converse in that way, then it's going to make the other person feel empowered and feel like they can solve whatever problem it is that they have. It's not about being a problem solver. So don't listen to solve their problem. Listen to listen. That's enough. You don't need to give them a solution. Often people aren't always looking for that. People just want to be heard. And so there are certain things that you can do to show that you are listening. You can repeat back what the person has said. So you're not giving advice, you're not telling them what to do, but you're showing them you're listening by saying, I think I heard this. I think this is what you said. And that actually we do this for two reasons. One, it shows that you're listening, which is extremely respectful and helpful. And two, if it checks in to see if you've heard it correctly or if you've misunderstood or you've misinterpreted something, and it gives the speaker an opportunity to go, well, actually, that's not quite what I meant there. I meant it like this, which then gives you a deeper understanding of what's going on. So listen with no assumption. Don't assume you understand how they're feeling. Don't assume you understand what's going on. Don't even assume that you understand what they mean by a certain word. So, when I say that I'm scared, don't imagine that means the same thing to you as it would to me. So check in with them. Ask them, what do you mean by scared? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Asking those kind of questions is another way of really listening and understanding the person's problem. And it's not there to solve the problem. It's there just to listen. I think this is important as well, to show these skills, is because what you do is you create kind of reflective, deep thinkers. You create people who are resilient and who have higher self-esteem, and listening alone and asking these kind of open questions. Tell me more about that, or what does that mean to you? That can help with all of those things. Okay, I think that's going to sum it up, really. Listening, but then there are small things you can do, like repeating back, etc.
Yeah.
Yes.
I get that. If we count the number of times you said listening, it'd be quite a high number. And the other things help you to listen, like not giving advice helps you to listen. What was the other one? Curiosity keeps you engaged in the conversation. And the fact that you're not there to give advice means, oh, thank God, I don't have to give any advice. I don't even have to find something that I resonate with or otherwise. Remaining as neutral and curious and following the client, in this case, as much as possible. Yeah, that's the way to go. Thanks, Dan. You got some brilliant quotes there. I don't know if you're aware of it, but every now and again you get very eloquent. I think eloquence is something you've practiced, I suspect. Some of those phrases rolled out and long. I thought, yeah, he said that before, but that's still fresh. For the people listening, it's still very fresh.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So what's happening now, as I said, we're going to kind of shred this down into multiple people answering the same question, but also just your voice saying what you believe is going to help nudge someone else to either get a coach for themselves or for their staff. And that's all that needs to happen, is someone to come along and say, Dan, I'm going to be your coach. And you go, well, hang on a minute. It happens to all of us. We don't know what coaching is until we've tried it.
Yes.
Well, we think we know. Yeah. That's even worse. We think we know what it is, so we don't want to try it. I have a story about cheesecake. I'm sure I've told it to you.
I'll go for it. I might have forgotten. Go on.
I was quite young. Somebody said, do you want cheesecake? I think I'm about 14, 15. I thought, cheese? I'm thinking cheddar. Cake? They don't go together. No. And then they said, oh, it's quite nice. And I was, try and persuade me because, they didn't want me to miss out on cheesecake. And I said, no, I don't want cheesecake. And obviously, walked away from the opportunity. Later, someone said, do you want to have ice cream cake? It wasn't the same day, it was later in my life. Oh, ice cream and cake, that sounds like fun. I was thinking like crumbled biscuits, like digestive biscuits and something you might get in a Ben & Jerry's box. And it was this wonderful digestive biscuit with an inch of ice cream floating on top. It was fantastic. And someone said, yes, it's cheesecake. I was like, all those years wasted when I could have been eating cheesecake. Same applies to coaching. You are going to say no to coaching because you think you know what it is.
Yes.
You don't. Yeah. You really got to sit in a room with a coach like Dan, who's got the training, you've trained to be able to listen, because that listening skill that you described, that's not what we normally do in a conversation. We normally, as you say, listen to either give my opinion or listen to where you're wrong or where you've got a gap in information. And that kind of listening is quite acidic. And what we're talking about is a different kind of listening. So once you've experienced it, now you're eating cheesecake, you'll probably come back for more.
Like that analogy.
Cool. Unfortunately, it's true. It doesn't sound as powerful you say carrot cake, because I said the same thing about carrot cake. Somebody said, do you want carrot cake? And I thought, carrot cake? Oh, yeah, no, thank you. Until I got a slice put on my tray, on my plate, and I ate it. And I thought, what's that? And they said, oh, carrot cake. I'm not supposed to like that. And then, getting older and reflecting on life, what have I said no to based on an assumption that I could have said, well, I'll try some of that. So really good stories that I can share with teachers. I could tell that once upon a time I hated cheesecake. Can you imagine? and I tell the story. And say, once upon a time, I hated coaching. And they all go, they're kind of already into, I know what you're going to tell me.
Yeah.
That's how I get them on board, because I don't think you can appeal to someone's intellect when trying to promote coaching. It's not an intellectual pursuit. It's something entirely emotional. I would say also spiritual, but I mean in an enjoyable way.
Yeah, 100%.
And once that connection's made between the coach and coachee, it's like falling in love. You use the word, I love this, I love this, I love this about teaching, and then you loved coaching. There is a sense of falling in love with the whole idea. No wonder you want to have more of it in your life. And I know from experience that once teachers meet the right coach, I think it's important that they meet the right coach, because there's all sorts of different coaches out there, all sorts of different cheesecake and carrot cake, I suppose. But once they've had the joy of connecting with a coach who's really good at listening, then they'll grow in themselves and they wonder, why have I been hiding away so long?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, because they form that connection with the coach, but then actually after a while they form this stronger connection with themselves, and this better understanding, this better relationship with themselves, and that's where it's life-changing.
Yeah. We have a group of, as you mentioned, head teachers are often alone. I say we, it's not my personal group, it's another coach who started this. They meet nowadays virtually, but they can also meet face-to-face. They don't call it coaching because they know what coaching is and don't want it, but they call it mirroring.
Okay.
So if I was your coach, I would mirror you, and you wouldn't want your mirror reflection doing something that you weren't doing. So if I start giving you advice, it's like, bloody hell, the mirror's gone by. It's suddenly giving me advice. But it can let me see how I look, so I can adjust what I do so it looks the way I want it to be. My life is in the mirror. So the instructions for the teacher, the head teachers who are enrolled in this mirroring, spiegling, it's called, they were told, just listen. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But they do it for each other. And some of them are really good, because you'd expect older, experienced head teachers trying to mold the younger head teachers who got this job quite recently. Oh, no. You just mirror back what's there. Just mirror back. And they will make all the decisions themselves about what to do, what to change, if anything. No advice. I don't think they even said no advice. They said just reflect back what you hear. Be aware of your, like, if your mirror's wobbly or tinted or cracked, to continue the metaphor. So the training there, the emphasis was on how neutral the mirroring coach could be. What's the least you could do? The absolute least. And if you do that, what's less than that you could also have done? So you're all the time connecting, but not influencing. Yeah. And as you do that, you become more and more influential.
Yeah. I like what you were saying there. What can you draw back? What's the least you can give? I did it was last year, this time last year, I was just coming to the end of it. I did a coaching mastery course. And actually the whole course was about stripping back.
Yeah.
So that like the first session was like, right, most courses add things to you. They add knowledge, add skills, add this, add that. So you feel like you've learned something, you've become better at the end of it. We're not going to do that. We're going to strip things back. We're going to almost get rid of certain things that potentially are hindering you to become the best coach you can be. And that stuck with me. That resonated with me. Like, it was over a year ago someone said that to me, and I can still picture it now. Like, that's the thing. To be a really good coach, a really good listener, is you've got to strip as much back as possible, and just be with that person.
And imagine how powerful that would be if teachers could switch that on. I call it their secret superpower sometimes. if you could sometimes be teaching, and by that I mean in the instructor role of, this is some information, it's on the syllabus, and I kind of have to, oh, hang on a minute, flip that switch. And now they are building that relationship, developing that relationship, but not dominating, not giving anything, nor trying to influence, just being a platform for that person to grow.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes, a few seconds. And I know that if you don't do that, you'll be pushed, particularly by teenagers, they're pushed the teacher's buttons because they're begging for that contact. And if you're saying, no, my subject's more important than you, they're not going to stop knocking on your door. They're going to push harder, and they're going to challenge in a more vitriolic way, a physical way perhaps, and they're going to be taken in as behavior problems, because that's what appears, that's what comes up to the surface. And it's actually a scream for being seen, being heard, being included. And if you can at some point set that up, you only need to refer to it during a lecture when you can see the students hungry for a contact. Just give them that loving look. I'm still here for you, but I got to do this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
this is something I find as a coach going into schools and colleges. I'm often sent the students who are labeled as the badly behaved. These are the students who walk out of class, who swear at the teachers, who don't do any work, who sometimes are physical and throw things and things like that. And yet I sit in a room one-to-one with these students, and they're respectful.
Yeah.
And they're kind, they're nice, they are, all of that goes away because they're not fighting for that attention. They know that they've got me for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is. They have got my attention, my full attention. I'm there for them, and I show them unconditional positive regard the whole time. And that's new for them, and they love it. They get hooked on that.
Unconditional positive regard.
Yes.
That's another name for love.
Can be.
Okay.
Can
I was using love, and I know it's a very broad term, but that sounded very specific. Unconditional positive regard. Yeah.
I can't take credit for this.
Okay.
So
where's that from?
It's what is it from? Rogers? Is it Carl Rogers?
Okay.
Is it 3 elements? I'm gonna have to double check that. But it's unconditional positive regard, empathy, and congruence. These are the 3 things that you need. Basically, he was saying that you need in a successful coaching session. Yeah. And so out of the 3, it was unconditional positive regard that stuck with me. And I took that even whilst I was a teacher. It doesn't matter what you do, what you say, how you behave. I'm still going to offer you unconditional positive regard. I'm still going to see you in a good light. And I've coached some people that would really push and challenge. I have coached in the past people who've just left prison, and they've done some very questionable things, but I still offer them that in that session.
Yeah. In the past, they've done some questionable things, but that's then. This is now. We get the chance to turn over a new leaf. You don't have to carry your past around with you. You were talking earlier about consequences, and that sometimes you need to let go of those previous consequences and start a new chapter or a new book. Indeed.
Yeah. Because I'm coaching the person sat in front of me, not the person they were 10 years ago or even yesterday. I'm coaching the present them. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we'll bring it to a close.
We'll bring it to a close. I'll just end the recording